Welcome, viewers, to another edition of the It Depends podcast. Just a few weeks ago, I had this opportunity to attend AWS Pi Day. I was expecting to get pies, but it turned out to be a different kind of a Pi Day. But what really amazed me was that this event came just 98 days after AWS reInvent in Las Vegas in December of 2024. And so many new announcements were made that I was taking my notes and I was trying to capture all the new things that happened. Apparently, no one in AWS takes a break, so I'm just a joke. Sorry. So today, I'm honored to have two key people in AWS's new unified strategy of data analytics and AI called SageMaker Lakehouse. The two key players are Sirish Chandrasekaran and Rick Sears. I am delighted you both took the time. I know how busy you are, seeing how many new things were announced. So thank you so much for coming to this podcast.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks.
Suresh, may I start with you? Perhaps you can give a little bit of your introduction.
Absolutely. Hey, everyone, I'm Sirish. I'm VP of Analytics at AWS, and I'm responsible for services such as Redshift, Glue Data Catalog, Lakeformation, and Lakehouse. And I partner with Rick.
Very nice.
Sounds
And
good. And hey, everyone, I'm Rick. I'm lead our data processing and experiences teams in AWS. That includes services like EMR, Glue ETL, Athena, and manage Airflow for orchestration, as well as the SageMaker Unified Studio and SageMaker Catalog, which are part of the kind of unified experience that you highlighted.
that is, by the way, I love that there is a title that has experiences in it.
Yep.
Because it is so important. We've known this from the Betamax versus VHS days, that it's all about experience. If the user has a great experience, they'll adopt it. Otherwise, they don't really care about the technology per se. But this podcast is for technology folks, and so they want to know that what is behind this new approach of SageMaker Lakehouse. So, Suresh, if I may ask you, what
Yeah.
was the genesis and the trigger to come out with this new approach?
Yeah. And, a lot of how we think about innovation in AWS, as you probably know, is we listen to our customers. We're very responsive, and we pull together threads and we look around corners, and that's how we innovate. And so when you think about the next generation of SageMaker, we've been hearing from a lot of our customers over the last year and two that, hey, the pace of innovation is increasing. It's getting faster and faster. And especially when you think about things like Gen AI, there's literally not a week, even now, that goes by without some new model, some new use case. And what I've been hearing, and Rick has been hearing, and others, is how do we innovate faster, right? Time from data to insights to actions. How do we close that loop faster? And it's no longer just about, hey, I need a better warehousing product, or I need a better Spark engine, or I need a better model trainer. It's about the end-to-end data and AI workflow. And so we went back to the drawing board and we said, look, customers love our best of breed solutions. Redshift is up to 7x faster than other solutions for BI workloads. Customers run hundreds of millions of jobs on Glue, right? We have SageMaker, which is used by a large number of customers to build models, and we have Bedrock. But how do we bring these together in a very simple package? You said it, right? Experiences. How do we bring it together in a simple one solution where customers can execute all of their different workflows in one place? And that's the next generation of SageMaker.
That's great. Rick, anything you want to add?
Yeah, and the other thing I would call out too is that to Surish's point, this has come up a lot with our customers, and we've actually been working to build kind of these integrated and end-to-end experiences for a while now, and doing things like as an example, when you're doing model training, a lot of the work, and we often hear from customers that the vast majority of the time spent in training a model is actually data prep and like data quality and like ETL of data and getting the data ready for AI. And so we've previously brought in features like data prep into the SageMaker AI experience, like for model training, connecting in the data prep world into the model training world. And so we've been hearing from customers and kind of bringing forward these experiences in different ways. But the next generation of SageMaker and what we've done with the Unified Studio, the catalog, the Lakehouse, bringing all together is really a culmination of really responding to a lot of what our customers need to make that seamless at the UI layer, at the API layer, and even in like down deep into the storage layer.
Yeah, got it. Why did you decide, or AWS decide to call it SageMaker Lakehouse? And I'm reacting to this because it came as a surprise when we heard about it. For us, coming more from the data side, SageMaker was something that my data scientist counterparts used to use for ML ops. And then Bedrock and SageMaker had been around since 2017. Bedrock is a more recent new
Yeah.
new brand for Gen AI kind of work. So why take Lakehouse concept and connect it to SageMaker?
Um, so when we think about what we're trying to communicate with the next generation of SageMaker, there's a few things. One is we see a convergence of workflows, a convergence of personas, right? So while SageMaker started as a brand, and it's a very beloved service to build models and deploy models, we see the spaces converging. And so as we thought about, hey, this is meeting customers where we are, because this is not something new. We still have Redshift, we still have Athena, we have all the services, Bedrock, that customers love. We're bringing it together in one experience. So we wanted to, rather than create a new brand, lean on a brand that's already well established and also communicates Sage. Sage, at least to me, speaks insights. And so
Hmm.
that, like, yes,
Very interesting.
Bedrock is a newer service, but we have a saying in Amazon, it's always day one. So we
Right.
look at all of our services as being in day one. And so that was never a factor for us. But SageMaker communicates what we're trying to do in terms of bringing insights together across data and AI, and it's a brand that customers already are aware of. So
That is very interesting. I never thought of it this way because Bedrock is a great name, but Bedrock is foundation. SageMaker is delivering sage advice, and that's the end goal is so businesses can make decisions faster with least amount of friction and spending less time doing what AWS calls undifferentiated heavy lifting.
that's right.
So let the system do it for you. So who are the personas for which SageMaker Lakehouse is designed?
Rick, you want to take that?
Yeah, we're really focusing on, as I called out earlier, like a lot of the work that are like these individual personas doing has kind of blurred a lot,
Hmm.
especially over the last, again, the last couple of years, where what we're seeing a lot of times is if you take the use case of model training, which would be a data scientist, primarily kind of maybe focusing on that part of the workflow. Really, that's only one piece of the end-to-end life cycle, what the job to be done, right? And so if you look at the job to be done, it actually includes a lot of times the expertise of a data scientist, the work of a data engineer, expertise of a data engineer, but it can also be the kind of pre-canned insights, the pre-canned queries created by business analysts. And so what we saw a lot from our customers is that it's actually these teams working together. So
Hmm.
it's like a handoff or a collaboration between a business analyst who's creating these queries, and then maybe a data engineer who's doing the ETL to create the materialization of those queries into data sets, reusable data sets, and then the handoff to the data scientist who's going to take that as an input to their model training, and that flow has to go over and over again. And so the persona is really actually all of those that we're targeting with the Unified Studio and the kind of and with the next generation SageMaker platform, the kind of full stack. And it's really about how do these different personas collaborate together. And so having an environment, having a UI, and having a backend set of capabilities that enable these different personas to do handoff in their jobs to be done. Each of them has a component that they need to do or a piece of the job to be done, but the end goal is still that the trained model, right? The inference endpoint that comes from the trained model, but it has to start with the raw data. And so it's really the persona is really the kind of end-to-end experience, which includes or spans many different personas.
That is very interesting. In the past, we used to have this situation where we would ingest raw data into a data lake, and then the data scientist would have a sandbox, you'd make a copy of it, and then the data engineer would have a copy, and then there would finally be a refined version for the data analyst or the business analyst. So what you're saying is that the idea is to have a unified, like single copy of data, but different personas. Like one may use a materialized view because it's faster to do your dashboard, but the copy of the data is the same. Is that
That's right. And so you can look at it from the perspective of the data management or data access layer, where you want to have a single copy of data. You may want to have views or derivations of that data. You
hmm,
also want to be able to then take that single copy of data and give access to a wide variety of different members of the team to make use of that. So that's kind of one layer of it. But then you also need these are people collaborating, right? A lot of times this is a people problem as much as it is a technology problem. And so
correct?
you need an environment where people can work with each other, right? And so that's why a lot of the focus with the Unified Studio was bringing together the end user experiences all together in one place, because we
Hmm.
already have for a long time, really great end user experiences with different studios for these different personas. So we have Glue Studio for data scientists, or sorry, data engineers doing data integration work. We have SageMaker AI Studio for the data scientists, and so each persona could use its own studio. But what we heard is that they wanted a place to work together, like people to work together. And so building out the unified studio gave these different personas and that are a lot of times on the same team a place to collaborate together, but have the tools that they want to use, have the best of breed, or kind of the purpose-built services and tools that we our customers have used for many years. They want to continue to use those, but have a new UI, new environment to collaborate in.
I'm very interested in diving into the nuts and bolts. But before we do that, since you mentioned, Rick, that you have different personas and they are using it, so I want to understand from a practical, real life point of view, who are the people? So, Suresh, maybe we can start with you. Who are some of the key customers, the launch customers, and how are they benefiting from using SageMaker Lakehouse compared to what they had previously?
Yeah. I'll give you one example. Toyota manufacturing in North America is a good, Toyota Motors. They're a great example. We have other customers, that we have featured on the website like Carrier, NatWest Group, Charter. And going back to Toyota, one of the things that they have found very helpful is, again, they use a number of different tools, and they want to be able to train their employees to work faster, right? Because again, undifferentiated heavy lifting doesn't actually create productive work. And so what they found is having all these tools in one place exposed through a SageMaker Unified Studio improves their data worker productivity.
I see.
And another really good example too, as far as another one we've talked about is actually internal is Amazon Transportation. We've talked publicly about their work with the next generation SageMaker platform, and really like internally we see this as a big enabler as well within Amazon, where we have a lot of a lot of teams that are working on key like retail focused use cases at scale to be able to do things like logistics, transportation, like product management, like the actual product, kind of a flow from a fulfillment center all the way to a customer. And so our internal teams are using this as well. And really the key thing is there's a lot of important data
Mhm.
that comes from this kind of retail flow, this kind of the work that is done within a warehouse, the work that is done within packaging and even fulfillment. And our teams want to make use of that data. Today we've built a number of different technologies within Amazon to better make use of this data built on top of AWS technologies. But our own internal teams want a more simple place to collaborate. And so it was really about our internal Amazon teams having a shared catalog of data sets, a ability to search and discover, easily search and discover, to find new data sets that they want to make use of. And so it's like there's a lot of powerful tools out there, and one of the big focus areas was actually making it more straightforward, simpler, and easier for data like anybody who wants to make use of data to be able to find the right data, gain access to the right data, and then have the right tools, kind of directly available to make use of that data.
That is great. Thank you so much. So let's take it next level. So Rick, I'm going to stay with you. If we were to break down the building blocks of SageMaker Lakehouse, and then we'll take each and talk about it, how would you break it down into key building blocks?
Yeah, you can kind of think of the kind of SageMaker, the next generation platform, is really encompassing three different layers.
Okay.
And let's start at the bottom, or the kind of maybe what most people think of as the lowest or kind of
Yep.
closest to the bits layer, which is which is the Lakehouse layer, and that Lakehouse layer is really about data access and the ability for us to offer a kind of open and a unified access path to data using open standards. And so that's one of the things that we focused on a lot in building out this next generation platform was working with open standards. And so we've prioritized and supporting the Iceberg standard as part of accessing data. And so what that means is it's an important technology choice. And what it means is that it enables a wide variety of applications to make use of the data. So it's not just the end user experiences that we're creating, it's any application that can talk the Iceberg standard, can make use of data in the Lakehouse. And so that was a very important focus for us, and kind of reimagining this experience for customers was maintaining open access to a wide variety of tools, both things that AWS has built as well as other technologies that have been built by our partners, or even that our customers build themselves. And so kind of we have that first layer of open and unified access to the data through the Lakehouse.
So
On
that's
top of
the
that,
Lakehouse. Okay, so that's sort of the storage layer with access and using open standards.
that's
So
right.
that's Lakehouse. Okay,
That's
so
right.
what comes above it?
You can kind of think of on top of that, you need the ability to kind of catalog your data sets, understand what data sets you have available, gain access to those data sets, and kind of really kind of govern, make sure that the right people have the right access to the data sets when they need it. So that's the data and kind of data governance layer. We've kind of consolidated that into the SageMaker catalog. SageMaker Catalog is built on some core technologies that we had previously launched as Data Zone. And we've really kind of merged those in and kind of directly built on top of these core technologies. So you have this governance layer that spans both data governance, so the kind of classic things around permissioning, lineage, kind of visibility into data, but also AI governance. And so it's model permissions and model the model catalogs. Those things have all been unified into this kind of common cataloging layer. And so that's the kind of, you can think of that as the next layer up.
So
And
it's
then
a
on top,
metadata layer,
that's
it's
right.
a catalog layer, but it serves all the personas, like you said before, because it's got the technical metadata for data itself, for AI models, a model registry kind of a thing, and business metadata as well
That's
in
correct.
SageMaker catalog. Okay, so it's got
Yep,
the entire gamut of metadata. It's a catalog layer, sits on top of Lakehouse. Okay,
that's right.
so and then the third layer.
And then the third layer is that unified studio, the kind of end user experience. And the catalog is a part of that, in the
Right.
sense that I'm using the catalog in the unified
Of
studio,
course. Yeah.
and it's my mechanism to access data, to know and understand data
Mhm.
with business, rich business metadata. But, really the unified studio brings that all together with the tools that I use. And so the unified studio includes a common single query editor that works across multiple different engines. And so we have a query editor that supports both Athena and Redshift. And so you can use the same query editor across multiple different query engines. We have a unified notebook experience based on Jupyter that supports EMR, Spark, as well as Glue, another flavor of Spark focused on data integration, but also talks with and works with HyperPod and the SageMaker training backends. And so you can think of that
Mm.
unified notebook environment as one tool to do data engineering, data integration, as well as my data science, model development, model training. And then finally, we also include in the Unified Studio the generative AI app development environment, which is Bedrock, the Bedrock IDE. And really that focus is kind of taking all of those capabilities I just talked about and building out knowledge bases and doing model selection, model selection amongst our kind of hosted LLMs or foundational models to build out the end goal of a generative AI application. And one of the cool things is all of these again plug into that common catalog, plug in and make available the assets that are generated from each of these types of tools. Those assets are available to be shared in the catalog. And so if I'm in the query editor and I build out a new table through some sort of like create table select, I can publish that into the catalog and then share it with the rest of my organization. Same thing with a model. If I'm in the notebook creating a new SageMaker model, I can take that model and share it out as an asset into the catalog, and again, kind of broaden the use across my organization. And then finally, the same thing with a Bedrock app. And so if I build a generative AI app, it's another type of data asset or data product that I can then share across the organization. And so we've really taken that idea of like collaboration and sharing using the catalog and plugged it into all of these different data use cases.
Very comprehensive. I love the vision. It's really all of a sudden it's like single pane of glass kind of a thing. It's not like if I'm a data engineer, I go to this application and this UI, but if I'm a data scientist or Gen AI engineer, then I go somewhere else or business. So what if I'm in a situation where my team likes to use SQL to do their analysis, and my counterparts like to use, let's say, Python or Spark or Ray, and then another team says, oh, we just use chatbot and we do prompts all day in and out. So now I've got three different people using different tools. What layer, how do they come together in this? Where do these multi-engine experiences sit on top of iceberg?
Yes, so they come together you can think of from a people perspective, they come together within the Unified Studio within the concept of a project. And so we have this abstraction, experience within the Unified Studio where you create projects to do your work. And the project contains the code that I need to do the work, things like a SQL query, a notebook, in other types of code that I might, I could even be Python code like you described, any type of code that I want to collaborate, and it's backed by a Git repository. So it kind of plugs into the standard, kind of, software versioning and software like code management that your teams are comfortable with. So you have code. You also have the data that the team needs to collaborate on. And so when you're in a project, you can subscribe to data sets like a table. It could be a data warehouse table. It could be a data lake table. Once I've subscribed, everybody in the project can make use of that table to get their job done. And then you also share, so it's data, and then you also share compute. And so an example might be something like a Redshift cluster or an EMR cluster to run Spark workloads. Those are also shared assets that the team needs to collaborate on. And so they come together in this project, but underneath the covers, this is all built on top of the existing technologies. And so really what we're doing in the next generation platform is managing a lot of the heavy lifting that customers would have to do to set up IAM permissions and roles, to be able to spin up clusters like Redshift clusters and EMR clusters. These are all now packaged together into these projects in a construct we call a project profile. And so you can reuse these templates over and over again to create a new project, get everything set up for you. All the, kind of the Redshift clusters get set up for you. All the kind of permissions and roles get set up for you so that when the team wants to get started with their job, all of the kind of, the infrastructure setup is done for them. And then I can jump into my project and start kind of running my queries or running my notebooks. And all of those tools plug into the project. And so when I'm in a project, I have access to the query editor, but I also have access to the notebook, and I have access to the generative AI app development environment. And so you can think of the project as the common entity that they all work within, but then they have access to whatever tool they want.
I'd riff off that and just add, we talked about single pane of glass, iceberg. Those are very important tenets of the product. But another one, which Rick referenced here, which I want to emphasize, is we want to meet customers where they are. Right. And so if you use Bedrock today, if you use Redshift today, Athena, we don't want you to have to switch tools because we all know migration is hard, learning new tools is hard. So the key is to bring it together but it's not just in the UX layer. One of the things that we thought deeply about when we designed the Lakehouse, and this is why, in our readme presentation, you'll see we think we reimagined the Lakehouse layer, is that customers have data in various different storage systems. We have a lot of customers who already have data in S3 that's registered with Glue Data Catalog. You talked about Pi Day. We launched support from our first-party engines with S3 tables, which was announced at readme, released at readme. And then we have a lot of customers who use Redshift. Redshift has its own managed storage. And then you have other data that's sitting in Aurora, Salesforce, Zendesk, ServiceNow, a bunch of different places. And what we didn't want customers to have to do is copy data from one place to another and then worry about, hey, does this all fit together? So the Lakehouse is reimagined in two ways. One is we give you easy tools to get data from operational systems into either Redshift or S3, you choose, right? And we do it either through zero ETL connectors, and we've always had zero ETL connectors for the last few years, whether from Aurora or Dynamo. But at re:Invent, we announced support for 8 new SaaS applications. So now with one click, you can connect your Salesforce data into our Lakehouse. The second is we have federated connectors where if you want to query that remote data in place, even if it's on premises, you can do that. And the third thing is whether your data sits in S3 tables, S3 Redshift, you don't have to move it around. The really cool thing is we have provided an iceberg interface on top of the data where it sits so that any compute engine can access any data no matter where it sits. So this concept of meeting customers where they are is something that's super important to us because we don't want customers to think, hey, this is a big migration journey. Customers have existing assets and they want to get more ROI out of it.
Sirish, you mentioned S3 table. So you're saying so you can bring data in or you can federate it. So you can do zero ETL and now you even with external systems into S3 or into Redshift or you can just federate it to the sources. But what is S3 tables that you've mentioned? What's the purpose of that?
So S3 tables is something we announced at re:Invent. In fact, we launched at re:Invent. And on Pi Day, we supported through the SageMaker Lakehouse, right?
Lakehouse. Okay.
And so S3 tables, they're a new bucket type which offers the Iceberg interface. And in fact, on Pi Day, we also supported a IRC endpoint, an Iceberg REST catalog endpoint into S3 tables. So a lot of customers want to store Iceberg data directly in S3, right? They want to access it through any engine of their choice. And now you can do that directly. And what's different about S3 tables, you've always been able to store raw Parquet data and have an open table format on top of it, whether it's Iceberg, Hoodie, choose your format. With S3 tables, again, magic words, we take away the undifferentiated heavy lifting associated, right? Dealing with orphan tables, compaction, all the things that go into managing Iceberg, we abstract it away so that you can focus on, hey, I have an engine that needs to read or write Iceberg data, and that's the layer I worry about.
So instead of manually thinking about compaction of small files or handling orphan files, so S3 tables monitors continuously in real time
Correct.
and it takes care of it.
Yeah.
So as a result, if I use S3 tables, then I'm going to get, in fact, I'm trying to remember because I documented in my blog 3 times performance of a out-of-the-box S3 bucket,
Correct.
and then 10 times transactions per second
That's right.
throughput. So
Yeah, the transactions per second is a really important differentiator too, because a lot of times these workloads end up, you can end up with workloads that have a lot more frequent updates or a lot more like there's a lot of variety in different workloads. And so, like our customers have wanted to be able to have, more flexibility and better scale. And this is something we're always doing in S3 and we've been doing for many, many, many years is pushing, pushing the limits of scale in S3. And this gives us with the bucket type being a table focused bucket, S3 was able to then optimize the way in which the engine, like an engine like it could be EMR, Spark, the way in which that engine accesses the data set. And so it's still a data set stored in S3. You still have the capabilities of durability and resiliency, and you still get all of the capabilities of S3, but now that it knows it's accessing these objects together as one, and knows that it's an iceberg table, it can add, it can basically extend the limits or extend the capabilities of what S3 can do to make it more scalable. And so that benefit is really, really important because, it's part of the, simplicity that we know our customers want, which is I just want to be able to run my workload. And as my workload gets bigger, the core technologies scale. And so this really made a big difference in being able to do that for iceberg workloads.
That's amazing. And then S3 table, once again, just repeating what you both have said, has an iceberg REST catalog endpoint. So any iceberg compatible tool should be able to just read data directly from S3 tables bucket.
That's right.
Okay. So there's also this concept of S3 metadata, and I saw at Pi Day there was this discussion how S3 metadata is now 35% cheaper than it used to be. What is S3 metadata?
Yeah, so S3 metadata is you can kind of think of it as a similar pattern to some of the things that we've done before, where we take data of
Hmm.
all different types of formats, and we extract metadata or extract information out of those data sets to then be able to make use of them in other applications. And so one example of one we've been doing, or that's kind of existed for a longer time, is the ability to extract schema information using a glue technology we previously launched called a glue crawler. So it's part of the glue overall service experience. But what a glue crawler has done is it takes a structured data set like a CSV, a TSV, JSON, and it looks at that. It has some sort of pattern matching rule that it looks at, and it can extract schema. And so what do I do with that schema? I can put that into my catalog, and then when a query engine comes in, it knows the schema to use when it accesses that JSON object. And so it's really extracting that metadata, putting it into a catalog, and then making use of it in a downstream application. And S3 metadata does that now for a much wider variety of different formats of data. And it does that using core technology that's a lot more flexible, using LLMs, using a trained model to be able to interpret the data and extract information out of it. And so it's really that, like I would say that an advancement in that use case of having automation to extract metadata out of different data sets. But in this case, we're extracting metadata. One example would be out of an image where you may want to know, you can maybe more easily get information like the image type, the format, the size, things like that, using the standard metadata that comes with an image. But what about the people that are in the image? What about like the types of what type of image is it? Like, what is the scene? That's information that you actually need to interpret the image to generate that metadata. But once you have extracted that metadata and it's available, and so what S3 metadata does, it extracts it and makes it available in a kind of a common format, another object that's kind of paired up with the base object. That can then be used by an LLM, that can be used by a generative AI application to better index into that object and understand and make use of that object data in an AI-driven application. So it's, again, it's a similar concept of extracting metadata, but it's a much richer set of metadata because it's able to interpret something that normally would not have. It wouldn't be easy to interpret, like an image, a video, document, things like that.
I even saw something very interesting that surprised me was, when I think of metadata, I'm thinking of a lot of things that you said, Rick. But what I found interesting was that there is an object tag called content source that tells you where this data came from, i.e., is it from a data source or is it synthetic data? So that was very interesting. Or did it get created by an LLM, for example? So I think with this low level metadata, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's actually very interesting to see there are so many gradations of metadata because your metadata associated with a bucket, then your metadata associated with an object, then your metadata associated at the iceberg with the schema, the columns, the data types. Then you've got metadata at the business level. And then you got metadata which is usage. and who's looking at it and who's allowed to see it. So, all of this is supported.
And it's
Sirish, correct?
Yeah, real quick, and it's also supported as a table, metadata table that's associated with the object. And so it's structured in a way that makes
Yes,
it easy to integrate into a wide variety of
yes,
applications. So you can integrate it into a model, but it's also it's a table. It's another kind of queryable or
yes.
structured set of data that's extracted from the object or kind of and so that makes that additional metadata even
Yeah.
more immediately useful in an
Thank you
application.
for reminding me of that. I'd forgotten. Not only is a metadata data available as a table, but it's an iceberg table,
That's
which
correct.
means any iceberg compatible tool can take a look at it. So talking about iceberg, so Suresh, what are the different iceberg REST endpoint catalog IRC endpoints that you support now?
We have two. One is with SageMaker Lakehouse itself, and the other is with S3 tables.
Okay, and SageMaker Lakehouse IRC is built on Glue catalog, is
Blue
that
Data
correct?
Catalog, that's correct.
So I can still use Glue from Athena just the way I've used it with proprietary APIs, but if I want, I can also use Iceberg.
That's right.
Is there a performance difference?
No.
I see. Okay. That is great. Now, so going up to experience layer, so we talked quite a bit about S3 tables, metadata, catalog. So at the experience layer, we keep hearing about Amazon Q. So you mentioned there's a query editor, there's a notebook. What is Q? How does Bedrock LLMs or your own LLMs or Anthropic, how do they come into the picture?
So think of Q as it's a Gen AI assistant, right? And
Okay.
it's the Q is infused throughout the SageMaker Studio experience.
Hmm.
I'll give one example, and Rick, I'm sure there's more. But one of the things that we're excited about is being able to use Q not just to discover your assets, tell me about all the tables that are related to churn data. You can also use Q to have natural language to SQL, right? So you can state in natural language what your intent is. We generate SQL automatically, and you get to execute it. And so the thing that we want to get to is we want to make data workers, if you think of SageMaker as a data workbench, we want people to be more productive faster. And the truth is a lot of people spend a lot of time mucking around with writing the right SQL, making sure it's debugged, and we want to simplify all of that.
And
Uh,
it's also that you can think of the ability to utilize a generative AI assistant is really something that is useful in all of the different parts of my journey, right? And so I want to be able to use a Gen AI assistant to make it easier to write SQL code, but I also want to be able to do data discovery. I want to be able to more easily create the code that is necessary to do model training. In all of those cases, a generative AI assistant is now available through the Unified Studio, and it's like and it's actually using the underlying data that's relevant to me, to my use case, to my team's use case. And so as an example, with the generative AI assistant, the Q assistant
Hmm.
to discover data, it's actually looking at the catalog that I have access to, and it's understanding the data sets and the tables that I have access to. And so when I ask something like what are relevant data sets that have information about the retail sales for shoes, something like that, it knows the tables I have access to. It's interpreting and understanding the business metadata that's associated with those tables so that it can then say, you should use this table, right?
Hmm.
Instead of saying, there's some generic data set out there, it's really about what I have access to and what's available to me within that catalog experience. And so, and again, it extends to, the other types of data work that I want to be able to do. And that's what we've been seeing is that customers want more and more of that end-to-end experience where I can do my end-to-end flow all through natural language. And so in every case, it's a kind of a natural language, kind of human-driven experience through a chat assistant to be able to get my job done. Underneath the covers, it can generate SQL, it can generate Spark code, it can do data access against the catalog interface. But to the user, I'm chatting. I'm chatting with my data. I'm chatting. I'm able to use a simpler interface to get my job done.
Can I use Q to ask a natural language question, but then get the SQL and edit it and then manually submit?
yes.
Yep. Yes, Kim.
I see. So I
Same thing
want
with Spark code. You can
Spark.
ask it a question. It will generate the Spark code. You can
Yeah.
you can kind of edit it. You
Okay.
can even do things like explain. You can click a cell and say, explain to me what this code does. It will then give you an explanation of what the code is doing so that you can maybe you weren't trying to learn more about it, or you're trying to understand why and
Right.
debug a problem, and you're like, what is going on with this notebook cell? And you can click on the notebook cell and have it explain the code for you as well.
I have a very important question. Can I do vibe coding in Q?
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay, sounds good. So talking about data. So I have two burning questions because we've talked about a lot of S3 and third-party data, zero ETLing it, federating it. The two types of data that I want to ask you next about is streaming data, and the second one is about unstructured data. So they're both extremely important. So let's start with streaming data. What is the support for data that's coming off, let's say, Kafka?
Yes, so today in the Unified Studio, you have the ability to create and make use of connectors, and that could be within
Okay,
some of the supported services like Glue and others that have the ability to kind of connect to a Kafka stream. That's one thing that we have available today. And we also announced at reInvent that we have more and more capabilities coming for streaming as well as search
I
and
see.
intelligence. That's something we've talked about. So there's a lot happening in this space. But what we're seeing is, and kind of really working towards, is that a stream is another type of data source,
Hmm.
right? Alongside a table, alongside another kind of even an unstructured data source. And so that's the ability to connect to streams is something that we support today, and we see as another part of the end-to-end journey for a customer to be able to have that access to raw data. And again, that raw data may be landed via zero ETL. That raw data may be just landed and needs to go through an ETL process that I create within the Unified Studio, or it could be coming from a stream. And so definitely that's kind of part of that end-to-end journey.
If I have data coming off two products that I know in AWS, managed service for Kafka, MSK, or Kinesis, uh, where can I say take these topics that are the payload that's coming in and materialize it as an iceberg table? How do I do that, and where do I do it?
And so there are a variety of ways to do it, but I think one of the ways is kind of through that process I mentioned before, where I can connect to and make use of a Kafka topic within something like Glue ETL. So I can write if I want to do some processing on that before I materialize it into an iceberg table. I can create an ETL process, set up a connector to a Kafka topic, process that data using something like Spark Streaming, so an interface into streaming data, and then the output of that, I can write that output out after I've done some processing on it into an iceberg table. So that's kind of one mechanism.
Hmm.
There's also automation available to be able to use technologies like Firehose, Kinesis Firehose, which is about setting up a pipeline between a source like a streaming data source. It could be a Kinesis data stream as an example, to be able to take that streaming data source, process it, and land it also into an iceberg table. And so that's something that we've been kind of developing and adding in. So you can kind of think of those as really two types of ways to process data. One is it gives me ability to customize the transformations, to be able to apply logic and kind of changes to the data from a stream to the table, the materialized table. Another is really a fast and easy pipe
Hmm.
to be able to do it with kind of minimal effort, but still get the kind of the scalable the scalable nature of stream processing, so it can keep up to date with the stream, generate the output, but I don't have to code it. I don't have to do all the work to
Right.
make it happen. So really, we see those as really important. Like different personas may use different types of these tools, but they really these Firehose, Glue ETL, they really live side by side as kind of a continuum of you know kind of hands off all the way down to deep customization.
Got it. I want Sirish ask you about unstructured data. 80% of data within organizations
Mhm.
is in documents, emails, PDFs, all kinds of unstructured data. what is your strategy and approach to bring this unstructured data into the same single pane of glass sitting with structured data?
A lot of customers ask us about the same question, right? So it's very much something we're looking into. For customers today, without talking much about our roadmap and what's coming next, like customers today could use something like Bedrock Data Automation to extract structure from unstructured data.
Hmm.
And then when you tie it into solutions like S3 metadata, as Rick was saying, you end up having it in tabular format that naturally plugs into Iceberg and SageMaker Lakehouse. In terms of what's coming next, let's look ahead a few
Yeah.
months. We'll find out.
Is there, can I store vector embeddings in SageMaker Lakehouse? Is there an embedding model?
You
So the way
can, so we,
go on.
real quick, we support, we do support vectors, vector stores across many different services in AWS. And
Okay.
so one example of the support we've kind of been bringing together into the experience is using OpenSearch as a vector store, and to be able to kind of store in vector embeddings and be able to make use of those through a knowledge base. And so what we see a lot of times is customers want a simpler way to get to the the kind of end goal, which in vector stores a lot of times is the knowledge base. So the way it plugs into the generative AI application.
Yep.
And so like in the Unified Studio, we have the ability to create a knowledge base. And within creating a knowledge base, you choose your vector store, you choose your embeddings model, and then it kind of sets it up to kind of generate and kind of pull together the knowledge base as part of that process. And so we do have core components that allow for this vector store across a number of different services. But really, part of our focus is being able to make that simpler from a job to be done. And so that's why we've kind of pulled that together into a knowledge base experience in the Bedrock layer.
So since you have consolidated, Rick, all of these personas and use cases, is the Unified Studio capable enough for me to even train a small model? So if I have a domain-specific model, do I go into Bedrock's UI or can I use SageMaker Unified Studio?
We're seeing more and more customers. Customers can do that with the Unified Studio today for sure, and that's
Right.
really where we built the Unified Studio. One of the key use cases to build the Unified Studio was this. We have a persona of a generative AI application developer, right? And so somebody whose end goal is creating a generative AI app. Many cases, they may use an existing model and just build a knowledge base and plug it into the model. But in other cases, customers want to take those models and fine tune them. And those capabilities are available through SageMaker, the SageMaker toolset. So within the Unified Studio, now I have the ability to do both in one place. And so we had this capability previously, available through the Bedrock console and available through the existing SageMaker AI Studio. But really, this is one example of the personas where we see it coming together, which is it's not just Bedrock to do my generative AI app development. I'm likely to make heavy use of SageMaker AI as part of that process as well, because it's really kind of a continuum of how much do I need to customize the model? How much do I want, a lot of situations are performant using RAG and performant kind of injecting data into context. But there's other cases where I actually do need to do fine tuning, that the model is going to perform better and be more cost effective if I actually create a derived model through fine tuning. And so we wanted our customers have the flexibility and choice to be able to apply the right strategy for building out their generative AI app. And that's where Unified Studio gives you that ability to do it, both of those in the same place.
Very powerful. Thank you so much for explaining that. Sirish, as we get closer to the end, you started telling us, I know you cannot talk too much about roadmap and tell us what's coming, but what is your key priority focus? I think we talked about some areas that maybe like unstructured data seems to be an important one. So can you give us some insight into what's coming next?
Some of this we've talked about before. So making sure that streaming and search are both first-class experiences with a next-gen SageMaker are important. Over time, we see a lot more work happening in the Iceberg space. Customers are voting with their feet. So making sure that Iceberg itself, as a standard, we bring in new capabilities, make it more performant for analytics is going to be important. But really, the way we think about innovation is the next gen SageMaker is the single pane of glass where we want to make sure that it's your center for data analytics and AI. But under the covers, we are continuing to innovate all the ingredients. So we're continuing to innovate to make Redshift even more price performant than it already is, make EMR simpler, all the things that customers want, we're continuing to act on.
Amazing. Rick, what's up your sleeves?
I think, to extend what Sirish was talking about, like another key area is the ability to understand, first off, get access to data and get access to all the different types of data that I want. So, we've been investing for many, many years in making it simpler and simpler to get permissions on data, to understand what data I have permissions to. And so that's a key part of the Unified Studio and the catalog and Lakehouse, kind of the next generation SageMaker experience. And so we're continuing to invest in making permissions more robust, being able to do more and more fine-grained access control on data to extend that with a wider variety of use cases. And so that's a big focus area is like permissions, because it's always critical for you want the most access to the data, but with it has to be very, very fine-tuned to only what I should have access to. And so our customers are really constantly looking for more and more ways to do that in a scalable manner. The other one I would call out too that we're investing a lot in, which is something that's in the Unified Studio, is lineage and data quality. Both of those are key parts of that, kind of end-to-end experience where you want to be able to understand the quality of data to make sure that your trained model, which was trained on that data, is going to operate well. And so you really need that end-to-end experience to be key. And we have data quality capabilities within Glue that feed into that. And so more and more investments in data quality and then lineage, the provenance of data. Where did it come from? How up to date is it? All part of that, kind of a assessment that I want to do around, do I have the right data to power my AI-driven application in the right way?
Amazing. All these things that I see on daily basis, people are asking about lineage and data quality, observability, such an important topic. Datadog got into this space. They bought a data observability company last week. So you can tell that this is a very hot topic. So we are coming to very close to the end, and I'd love to end on a lighter note. So, Sirish, if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you, what are your passions, your hobbies? Like, what do you like to do? What does the world in general does not know about you? They see you as the VP of analytics, data analytics, doing all this stuff. But tell us something that you like to do in your spare time.
I spend hours on Zelda, Breath of the Wild.
So you spend hours on
Zelda,
Zelda.
Love
Wild.
it.
It's an amazing game. So I can't get enough of it.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. That's amazing. Rick, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely have spent a lot of time, I have a younger son. He loves Fortnite as well as Zelda Breath of the Wild,
Yeah,
Tears of the Kingdom as well. But I love when I first moved to Seattle a number of years ago,
hmm.
I took up sailing, and so I've been kind of
Oh,
sailing a lot. When I was in Seattle, I now live on the East Coast of the U.S.
I
and
see.
but it's just it's one thing that just kind of it gets me out of the day to day. I can be on the water just sailing and you're going with the wind and it's a lot of fun. It kind of gets you in a different mind space. So I've definitely always taken that up as a passion and done more and more of it. And so it's just one of those things that helps me, kind of think differently, get out of my
Yeah,
normal
very
mind
nice.
space.
Yeah, it's so important because we literally are deluged with information on the hour. There's a new LLM or there's some new uh, approach, like it's MOE one day and it's something else next day. So, but thank you so much. This has been very enlightening. I've learned so much about how AWS is tackling this simplification, unification, making it easier for customers to get value from their data. Really, this has been a brilliant podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Take care, everyone. Until next time. See you. Bye.
Yeah.